we should start with that, and maybe we start with you, Roland. We'll wait for Anna.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. One thing that struck me apart from, first I think I have to congratulate you and the students for this excellent series of interventions, which are very rich and show how complex the whole issue is. And in fact, one thing that strikes me is, especially in this the excellent summary of these 6 meetings, is that things are becoming much more complex. When we look at heritage, it's not about, let's say, conservation and then going there and have a nice time and look at some issues. If you look at all the things that have to be, let's say, taken into consideration now when we talk about heritage, it is frighteningly complex, I would say. So we have to be aware that we are making things much more complicated than they were maybe in the past. So it becomes more difficult to reflect these, let's say, requests or dimensions or aspects into real life terms, into practice. One thing that I take from this symposium is that, in fact, it's not only about, it has been pointed out in the summary, it's not only about how to translate the concept of sustainability into heritage, how to apply it, let's say, in a heritage site, how to make the management of a heritage site sustainable. Yeah. But it's maybe even more the other way around, because you have pointed out in the first statement, the concept of sustainability is still a very floating one, vague, ambiguous. It's not where we are only started to get closer to it. So I think maybe it's even more important what heritage can contribute to the concept of sustainability. And if you look at the Brundtland definition, which Michael Kloos has given, it is only about the present and the future. It says, let's say, I wrote it down, the development that meets the needs of current generation and allows future generations to meet their needs. So it's a concept that has only one dimension. We are here now, we are doing things, and we have to think about the future, how people in the future will do it. What is lacking is the past. And maybe this definition should be supplemented by saying, using the experiences, the wisdom and the knowledge of past generations. Because Jennifer, if you have mentioned, I think the 60,000 years of let's say, wisdom of the Aborigines in Australia. And we think it's like Descartes, like a bit of Cartesian approach. We are here, and the world starts with us, and we have to project what we do into the future. So what interested me most in this symposium is what we can really, what the past teaches us, shows us how past societies and individuals, how their choices were culturally embedded, culturally motivated. Because I think the concept of sustainability is not an invention of our modern times. It has always been there in the past, as you and others have shown. So I think this is very important, maybe even more important when we deal with heritage, to show how the concept we are struggling now to introduce into our own perspective has always been kind of a guiding principle, a natural guiding principle for societies, because they couldn't do otherwise. We started to do otherwise now, and so if you ask Western, non-Western, maybe it's the wrong approach. But of course, there is something like modern lifestyles. I don't know. We have a globalization. We have seen that what you have called the local involvement is very important. And the last presentations by you from India was about people should not go to the cities because let's say what they get for what they have had, maybe it's not a good choice. But we know that the world is urbanizing. This is exactly what is happening. So there are huge challenges with globalization. The local is getting devaluated. People are going to the cities. They are, let's say, getting used to urban lifestyles. So it's very complex because we cannot, let's say, somehow learn to live like the Aborigines. because somehow what you said is right. The question is, of course, we have to challenge our own concept of sustainability. We have to respect, let's say, older concepts that are already sustainable. But somehow, how does that help us to finally find solutions, global solutions to the huge problems we are facing?
Thank you, Roland. Anna, would you like to continue?
I can stay here for hours. No, I think if we are exploring beyond, I think we can also question what also heritage is. If it's just a matter of what is listed through time, or in fact what managed to survive. Because what it doesn't manage to survive, it means that it lost its meaning as heritage to communities, and they decided to destroy it, or tradition extinguished, and then the designation and the listing is just one of the tools. If there is no listing, if communities still value it, it's their heritage, even if they don't name it as such. So I'm very interested always to try to understand how far do communities go in making into legal tools, and then how does that goes back and helps them protect their heritage, whatever they define it as being heritage. So that would be interesting to hear different perspectives on what heritage is. Yeah.
It is to answer to this question, or to this comment. I had a discussion with Francesco Banderin, and he invited me to make a new book on tools in heritage. Tools, and this is what he said. Tools are needed everywhere to define heritage, to identify heritage, and also to protect heritage in different areas. And maybe we should think about that, because I also find that very important. Maybe we can go on.
Yes, I'd like to go back to two earlier points. The first was the idea of the past and the future, and the problem of the present. But of course, we're always talking about a line, which is, for want of a better word, a Western concept that time's in fact linear. When of course quite a lot of societies have an idea of time as concentric and kind of resonating outwards, even in parts of Europe. Some people would argue that even in Ireland, that the memory is both linear and concentric, like shockwaves from the 800 years of colonisation. So we have to always be conscious, I think, of where our most basic concepts come from. Time as a line must always be interrogated when we're working in the World Heritage Area. And the other thing was, yes, I agree, it's become extremely complex, heritage. But if you just, when you're at parties with people, having dinners with friends who don't think about heritage day and night, there are a few people like that, not many, but just a few. You, I think, will find what I discover is that most of them don't think it's complex. They think it's based on the aesthetic, and they think it's supplemental. They think it is the cherry on the cake that you can easily go without. See someone saying yes over there, you discover that we know it's huge. So I think that probably one of our great challenges is to disperse, or to move to move into the community. Much more complex heritage education probably means starting in primary school, when they're doing something like civics or basic politics or social studies, that they have a sense of protecting material and immaterial culture that represents other times, because I think it's regarded as kind of a fun pastime for those of us who haven't got anything better to do. I'm often feeling that I have to explain how complex it is.
Mm-hmm. But maybe you ask what is heritage. You don't ask what you love about your city or where you live and your favorite places.
No,
and that's their heritage and what they keep
true.
And what they say.
It's true.
So. And that's the experience we have when we are engaging in communities and try to make heritage assessments out of communities. We are not using our jargon, and in the end we go down and we discover their attributes, their values, and what exactly they value on the city. But if you again go back to the traditional notions of heritage, monuments and castles and churches, of course then they have this narrow view. But if you take all that out and say, just tell me what you love about your city and where you like to go with your family and such, and you see they're changing, and your traditions and your favorite music, you all see coming up when you bring all those results together.
I'm in some ways speaking at the bureaucratic level. I'm talking what happens when you're trying to protect a site and you have to deal with a roads department the water board. People like that who are very highly educated in their own fields, who would never, ever presume to comment on brain surgery, ever, but feel they can comment on anything in heritage. And that they speak from a common sense position that can't be challenged. So perhaps I should have said more the bureaucracy, because they're not interested in me saying to them, what do you value in your community? Do you love your trees? Do you love this? Do you love that? No, they're ready with a pen in the hand to sign off on this, an agreement or not. Looking at legislation processes, for example, when the people who are preparing the legislation, which was actually my husband in Australia is doing right this now, he's preparing new heritage legislation for our state, and he has to negotiate with every possible government department, and that's what he encounters again and again and again and again.
I would like to come back to the beyond, and I would like to ask Herr Kloos on the first question I raised, in your presentation, what is the beyond? Is there any beyond, or is there any real, or is there, is there something which can be said, this is beyond?
Yeah, it's difficult to go beyond.
It's fun.
So in that,
it's the future.
In that sense, it's a difficult question. I would call the beyond, actually, I would like to turn it as concrete as possible, actually. Also our discussions about sustainability. I always encourage to think in best practices. In all times, all terms, in all manners, because you can learn from each other, and it doesn't, in my opinion, it makes no difference whether the lecture comes from the east or the west. I don't see the difference. I think we can learn a lot from each other, and I think this is still the subject which interests me most on World Heritage, the idea, the crucial idea. But actually I would encourage really to get things really as concrete as possible. I agree with Roland Bernecker that heritage became increasingly complex in recent years. It became complex because we made it like that. We turned it in like that. I mean, this shift in paradigm, which you also mentioned, means basically, for instance, I'm an urban planner and an architect, that heritage became very much a subject of urban planning. And so you can't insulate it anymore. And if you talk about it in social manners, you also can't insulate it from social affairs. So basically, heritage and world heritage became somehow, there's very much interference, and I think it becomes more and more difficult to control it. We're still very much in the beginning of that. That is why I would advocate to write this book on tools, because we need tools. In all levels, I think. We have to learn from nominations, we have to learn from assessments, we have to learn in participation processes, all these kind of things, and we need the right tools for it. So actually I would turn it as pragmatic as possible, and that would for me be the beyond, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. I would ask the group participants whether you have some recommendations on the one hand on the beyond or on the tools, or what, according to your understanding of what we discussed here and what we presented here, should be included in a new book or in a research project or in a case study or whatever. I think it is important that we continue to discuss what we have presented here in terms of heritage and sustainability. And I did not mention that I'm beyond recommendations. I do not like recommendations anymore, because what I know is we have not many recommendations which have been brought into the reality, into the practice, and therefore I think what we need is much more than this. But and this was another reason to organize this symposium here. But maybe you have some ideas which we should include into our discussion or into our dialogue. It's more a dialogue than a discussion we have. Yeah.
Dušan Kamberger from Slovenia. We have to introduce him.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm really sorry I haven't had the opportunity to be here with you for these few days. now I heard the results in a way. And in fact, we should sit here for days and weeks and so on. So I'll try just to make a remark beyond. Okay. What I think is that sustainability is a survival issue. So it was a survival issue, and it is, and it will be the survival issue in any fields, on any levels, not only in physical, also in cultural and other fields. So we could develop this, but I think you all understand what I mean. Then the other point for me is heritage is an identity issue. Well, we all know that it is. But thinking about the tools or things like that, how to go on, more and more, and through decades of work with the heritage, I think that we lack emotions or inclusive intelligence or emotional intelligence for dealing properly with the heritage, which is our history and our future. So we have to understand each other, that we have to be open. So my proposal for a tool is to open mind, to all people working with heritage, to open their souls, their hearts, to understand and to listen. First, to listen to the others. The ambassador of Portugal mentioned in discussion 2 days ago that this all about the World Heritage is a question of human rights.
Yeah.
This is the human right. Or you mentioned perceptions, equality, justice, diversity, values, and so on. That's the question of human rights. And then the other, you see practical examples. We talked yesterday with delegates from Ethiopia who turned the attention of all of us that only one member of the committee is coming, one state is coming from Africa. Only Senegal is coming. While 5 countries from EU are the members of the committee. That I think is really something that we think about. And to conclude, I think that the World Heritage Convention is a very good frame, maybe not the tool, but maybe the frame to enable us to think about the others, not only about us, but the others. When we go through the list, we meet sites, we meet culture that we never dreamt about, and we are open. And I think that listing, well, this of course is the cherry on the cake, listing, but through the nomination process, through all events which are organized around the convention, we have the opportunity to know each other better, and that's our future.
Thank you very much. Any other? Yeah.
I don't want to add on any subject matter, but I want just to thank you. In fact, on the very first day of this WSC, I picked up a book which was published by your center probably when this chair was launched. And for the last 6 days I've been reading that. And thanks to my friend from Russia, that she said that why don't you come for this? And now I come to know that Jyoti, Ninja, and all my friends have already spoken here. This is really a wonderful opportunity for me to be with you all. And maybe we can have a longer association on this matter. I run a program, similar program in India, Master of Architecture and Conservation. And that's a 4-semester program supported by Indian Commission of UNESCO. And we are looking more into cultural dimension, especially when areas like we have a World Heritage Site which is a prehistoric site near our institution, which may not have any association with the present population because it's a prehistoric site, yet it is identified as a cultural landscape by World Heritage. Now we are trying to see that what are those continued cultural identities which are seen by UNESCO criteria also, as well as what are being followed presently, and maybe in the buffer zone of World Heritage also. So it would be lovely to have longer association with your program. Thank you very much, and thanks to you.
So thank you very much. I think we have to finish now, to stop now, because there is a very, very, very important process over there. I thank you very much